In this video, we're going to be exploring the reverse percentage topic. And this is one of the only times with percentages that we actually do a division. If you're in any doubt with percentages, we nearly always times, but in this case, we do a divide. So what's the sort of question that you'll be coming up against and the wording that you should be aware of where you apply this different strategy? And the wording of the question is always kind of going back in time. Okay, so if you get this idea that you're going back in time with your percentages, that will help you to do a reverse percentage. What would that look like? So you might have a TV that costs £450 in a sale, and we got a 10% discount. Okay, so a TV was £450 after the 10% discount had been applied. And the going back in time part is that they'll ask you for the original price or the normal price or the pre-sale price or something like that before the discount was applied. And because you're going back in time, that gives you a clue that you're doing the reverse percentage topic. Now, I'm going to demonstrate to you what nearly every student does and how that's wrong and how you can check that it's wrong so that you don't make that same mistake. This is very, very, very common. Okay, so with our calculator, if we do £450 times 10%, £45, add that back on to the 450, we get £495. Remember, this is the wrong approach. Okay, but the numbers are nice, they check out, 10%, add that back on, that kind of makes sense. However, I want you to check your percentages questions like this. Let's say 495 was correct. I would be able to do 495 times 10%, £49.50, and take that off. So take the discount off. 495 minus the £49.50 gives £445.50, not £450. So what happened? Like the 10%, I worked out 10%, added it on, and then I took the 10% off and I got a totally different answer. Where's that extra money disappearing to? And that is your kind of alarm bell that working out 10% of the new price and adding it back on does not work. So let's have a look at what does work and how you can check at the end in the same way, and it will give us our £450. Let's imagine our starting price. You don't have to use algebra. Okay, if you do, that's great. But there's our starting price. We want to find that. If I take 10% off, so a 10% decrease, this is where we need the idea of the multiplier. Okay, not necessarily as a decimal, but when I work out 10% and take it off, that's the same as multiplying by 90%. Okay, or 0.9 if you really want to use the decimal version. I advise not to use it because students get confused. Like 9%, they put 0.9. Okay, that is actually 0.09. So, and with decimals, it gets even harder. So I would just keep it as 90%. We start with our original price, we times 90%, and that gives us £450. Okay, that's what's happening in sort of diagrammatic form, if you like. We're trying to reverse the process. We want to go from the 450 back to the original. Okay, so when you want to work backwards in maths, we do the opposite. Okay, I'm going to do the opposite of times 90%. Divide 90%. 500. Okay, so just from this simple kind of flow diagram here, what did I start with? Times by 90%, I've got this. To go backwards, divide 90%, I get my answer straight away. Okay, so this is, like I say, this is the only time we really divide by a percentage, but it's because we're going backwards, we're going in reverse. So try to use this reverse percentage idea. The difficulty is perhaps getting this multiplier. So if it was an 8.6% discount, we would do 100 minus 8.6, which is 91.4. So 91.4% would go in here, and then I could divide by 91.4% when I get to my actual answer that I need to do my division for. So 91.4% would take it back in the opposite direction. Okay, so most of the time your reverse percentages are going to be with a discount. Sometimes, quite rarely, but I just want you to be aware of it, the reversal could be a loss. Okay, so what I mean by that is reversing an increase, so coming backwards. So I probably should have said it's when it actually goes up in value. So let's say you had a house, however much, 300 grand or whatever, and it increased by 10%. You would times by 110% and get the new value. Let's say it was 330,000. And you wanted to know how much it was before the increase. You can't work out 10% of this and take it off, because if I try to reverse that, I won't get this. I have to do my 330,000 divide by 110%, and that's my 300 grand that I started with. So this reverse percentage is very tricky, and my advice is, when you see this question, sort of question 15 or 16 in the higher tier, and you think I just have to take off 10% and get 3 marks, try to have an alarm bell ringing, because they're not going to give you that type of question later on in the test. It's there to test to see if you understand this reverse idea. So when you get your answer, if it's wrong and you try to do the normal forwards direction, you won't get this. So it's your clue to go, right, that didn't work. Let's try the reverse percentage one, and that should do it.